Hi friends, I am back with another review, and today we are looking at the next figure in the Crimson Dynamo wave, and we have got the right arm of our Crimson Dynamo, which is fitting to this character because he is the right hand of the Red Skull, and that is Crossbones. Now, I'm going to get right into it with this figure because there's some pretty specific things I have to say about it. I am really excited that they did this as the comic book Crossbones. I don't know if I'm alone in this, but just my humble opinion, I did not like what the MCU did with Crossbones. I didn't like the way that it looked. I felt like it was too subtle. I didn't like that they sort of erased so much of his history, and he was so bland and sort of a do-nothing character when I just don't feel that that would be the case. I don't know. I just didn't like the way that they did it. So I was really happy to see this figure, and when I was looking at visual references from comic books, overwhelmingly I felt like they did a really amazing job, even to his mask, the ties of his mask, like fluttering in the breeze the way that they do. Fluttering in the breeze, that doesn't sound very scary, but so really overall I'm super stoked about the way this figure looks. But I'm gonna get these out of the way right off the bat. There are probably 4 main things that I hate about this figure, and then we'll get into the things that I like. So the first thing is something that I talk about all the time. I realize that for this figure, posability is a really big deal because he is a master of hand-to-hand combat. He was trained by Taskmaster in the Villain Academy and became a professor there himself. Professor or trainer there himself. So being able to pose in a lot of fighting poses is really important to this, but I cannot stand this mechanic. I've seen it on several figures. It doesn't make any kind of sense. I hate it. I just hate everything about it, and I might be alone in that, but I think that it is stupid, and it leads to some really strange looking things going on with the body when you actually make use of it. I just have never found a way to use it that makes sense. The turning in the ankle, a better 360 turn in the ankle, even though if it doesn't go all the way around, would be better for me. This one's okay, but I hate that, and I'm gonna probably mention it every time I see it, even though I don't know if other people are talking about that. It drives me crazy. The number 2 thing I really dislike about this figure is the fact that he does not have a stiletto. He is a master marksman as well as a master of hand-to-hand combat. Let's look here at his hands. But he does not have his gauntlets and thereby doesn't have his stiletto, which I think is just a miss. There's no reason not to have it. There's no reason not to include it. The weapons that he does come with are really cool. Here they are. He has 4 guns that he comes with, so that's great. But the stiletto missing is annoying to me. I didn't like that. The third thing that I really dislike is this comically short torso. Look at how short his torso is in scale to the rest of his body. And I can think of a few reasons that would be. I think, one of the primary characteristics of Crossbones is his physical imposing nature, that he is a massive man and physically imposing to almost everyone. I mean, he is one of Captain America's main nemeses, and he really stands up to Captain America, so he has to be like that, I think, for that to make sense. And so I think that the short torso might be to emphasize his broad chest, but what it actually ends up doing is making, to me, the figure look very comically imbalanced. Like, not like in a positive way that it's a tribute to the comic, but he looks silly. I think that having this weird short upper body, I just feel like there could have been better ways to, I don't know. It just looks very strange to me. even when I was checking comic book references and visuals to see that they had captured him properly, and I think overall they did, but the torso of this figure is so short that they had to confine his actual crossbones from like nipples up instead of being across his chest the way that it is in all of the reference pictures that I looked at. And I feel like I'm not 100% sure why he came out like that. I think that it probably had to do with building up the bulk of his upper body, but it's a miss for me, and it just looks really super weird, and I'm quite frankly bothered by it. And the final thing that I really dislike about this character, this figure, I promise there are things that are great that I'm going to talk about, but is the zipper teeth mask. So in all of the reference materials that I saw, and the ones that I preferred at the very least, he had a much more skull-centric look to his mask. Whereas this zipper teeth, I think in conjunction with the short, weird torso, the short crossbones, this weird sort of like tiny upper body, like height-wise, tiny upper body, having the proportions be so insanely off for me, that just adds even further. And quite frankly, the mask reminds me of the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, if you remember that cartoon from the early 2000s. It's just not scary. This is someone, like I said, he's the right hand of the Red Skull. He was a gang member as a young man. He was trained up by Taskmaster to the point where Taskmaster made him a teacher. He is relentless in his pursuit of Captain America and stands up fist to fist with Captain America many times. In the death of Captain America, he plays a major role in Captain America dying. I mean, there's just so many. He actually, his introduction is vile and horrifying, what he does to sort of come on the scene. I forget the character's name. I think it's Rachel. This is a bad dude, and I think it's a misstep in every possible way to make him look cartoony. Comic book characters aren't necessarily cartoon characters. Like, this isn't something that should be cutesy or lighthearted, particularly with this character, and I just think the zipper mouth is a miss too. So those are the things that right off the bat bug me about him. Now, the things that I like about him are what I first started off with, the fact that they went with a comic reference for this instead of the MCU reference, which for me missed on all fronts. With this figure, it really harkens back to the two major storylines that he plays in. You can see, I just feel like he stands alongside, like if I had a really good Red Skull figure and these were side by side, they make sense together. He makes sense in the comic books, and he has I appreciate the attempt at making him as physically imposing as he's meant to be. So even though he's missing his stiletto, his weapons look great, and overall the musculature, like I do see the bulk and the way that they did make him look physically imposing. It's just the short torso that really bothers me. But the points of articulation are spot on. So if you want to pose him in any sort of fight with Captain America, you're going to have no problem with that with this guy. All of the joints are loose and easy. Again, like with Yelena, we have this belt and harness that kind of impede movement in the legs outward, and some of the turning in the waist. We can't obviously turn as much as we'd like to, which is a bit of a problem, but not too much. But the knees are great. They are double jointed, but he is incredibly muscular, so it's a little bit difficult to come all the way back. The ankles and feet are great, so really they're good enough that there was no reason for this weird boot, but you can probably get something out of that if you know what you're doing with posing your figures. He has great movement in his arms, double jointed elbows. His wrists are great. He doesn't come with an additional set of hands, so both of his hands are trigger fingers, which again I think is kind of a miss. He is a marksman, but throwing in fists so that he could do battle poses, is kind of a miss for me, but I mean, that's something that's really easy. I'm sure everybody out there has like an extra set of fists, so it should be pretty easy to remedy that, but it just seems like a silly oversight to me, just like the stiletto. So in this really short torso though, we have excellent range of motion, back and forth. His waist is only hindered by his belts, so the movement from side to side is wonderful. The head is excellent. We get great movement backwards, forwards, side to side. So you can get a variety of great poses there. And yeah, I feel really comfortable and confident about being able to put him up next to my Captain America, or even with my Taskmaster. I don't have a Red Skull, I need to get one. If there is one out there, I'll have to find one. But I feel like I can create some pretty interesting scenes with this figure. And I know I started with the negative, but it's because to me, I like this figure so much. I've liked him. I have had him in the box for a little while now, and I've liked him so much that when I started to do my background research a little bit on the character and what I already knew, taking that into account and looking at the way that I'm probably going to end up playing with him, I really just was sort of miffed by those things, those mistakes, because he isn't probably one of the most famous Marvel villains, but he made quite a stamp on the universe, and I feel like it's just a great opportunity to create a beautiful figure. Like with Taskmaster, there really isn't sort of a better model to build a figure from. So those kinds of little missteps I find irritating, and that's why I sort of started off with that. But I would say top to bottom, overall, as far as movement, posability, the paintwork is simple, and I'm not 100% happy with the short crossbones here, the zipper mouth. I'm not 100% about the style of the hood. It doesn't really read perfectly to me, but overall, he is really good looking. So without like nitpicky things like the things that I mentioned, I think that this is a figure that will hold up well in any collection. He'll be great for photographing. I have so many friends that do really cool toy photography, and so I'm always sort of thinking in that perspective because I love to see the things they come up with. My toy photography, for anybody who's followed my Instagram or follows me on Facebook, is always very silly, but I always like to do, a lot of the poses I do are like full range of motion, so I like to be able to move my figures around in different types of ways. So overall, I think that this is a good figure to have in your collection. I like that they use the comic book reference. I think there are some missteps on the specific design points of it, but overall, I really like the way that it looks, and I'm happy to have him. I'm so much more happy to have him than I would be to have an MCU one at the very least. So with that said, we have covered our Crossbones. We have 3 more figures left to look at in the Crimson Dynamo wave. Let me know what you guys think of this figure, what you're thinking of the Bath figure if you are working on it. This is what we have so far. I'm really excited. He's large and in charge. It's going to be good. I feel like he's going to be so much fun when he's finally finished. And let me know what you think about my style of doing videos this way, as far as having a bath wave, having all the figures, and doing the videos close together, or if you prefer them to be a little bit farther apart. I'm just interested to know as I'm growing. I want to make sure that I do things in a way that makes sense to everybody. Thanks again so much for watching, you guys. Thank you for your comments, your likes, your criticisms, and your suggestions. I appreciate everything. And I will be back the day after tomorrow, which is Wednesday, with the left arm figure, which will be the Red Guardian. All right, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.